Hello, I'm Pastor John. How you doing today? I am so happy to be with you for the next few minutes, and we will discover exactly whose side we're on. We always like to say that God is on our side, but let's discover what and how we are to think as Christians. It is time for the call to prayer. Yes, I am in that odd place right now. I'm doing a fast filming because tomorrow I leave and my wife leaves for graduation. My son's graduating from Walla Walla and he's going to be a minister over there a pastor over there in Washington in the Seattle area. So we need to get going over there, and we will be back next week. Most likely the next call to prayer will not be happening, or if it is, it'll be out there in Washington. I'm filming it. So I did a fast filming here, and I want to use the sanctuary platform here, and I'm so glad to be with you. But I was reminded that by a special thing that I did this week for Glendale Academy teachers. There's just something that's been impressed upon me. So I'm stopping Acts for a little bit. I'm going to go to Joshua. Turn with me to Joshua and discover a truth from an otherwise not noticed text in the Bible. As you know, with the story of Joshua, if you do know the story, Moses was in charge of the children of Israel, pulling them out of Egypt. There were all kinds of things that happened in the desert. There were hard things and good things. And the children of Israel were given the 10 Commandments. Then the sanctuary was set up. God set up his kingdom, but the people in Israel lost faith. They did not believe that God could sustain them to conquer the Nephilim on the other side of the Jordan River, and they were scared to death. So God said, or should I say Moses said after God gave him the command, may the amount of days you were in the wilderness be for the amount of years. And that's where we get the day for a year principle based on prophecy. The 40 years in the wilderness, no longer was circumcision happening, and they wandered in the wilderness. The generation that came out of Egypt, they died in the desert, and the children were to inherit the new promised land. Well, Moses died on Mount Nebo, and God resurrected him. Of course, we find out later, but Joshua was put in charge of the children of Israel. They came to the Jordan River. And the minute that the Ark of the Covenant, the feet of the priests, entered the water, boom, it went up all the way up north to Adamah, the town of Adamah. It piled up, and the kings of the area saw the power of God there. And then they came across and they landed in Gilgal, which literally, God says, I have unfolded the history of Egypt for you. Therefore, you will be in Gilgal. And Gilgal in Hebrew has that sound, that ring of unfolding. So like a scroll to unfold. It's like a flat place, an unfolded place where people can stay. And all these people stayed in Gilgal, just to the south and the east of Jericho. They had taken the stones out from the center of the Jordan, 12 big stones, and put them at the side and set them up as an altar. And God said, remember these stones, and when your children see them, remember that God can take care of you. I led you out of the wilderness into a new land. You know, when we've gotten out of this pandemic time, we've entered a new land. A land where we can get something done. We can put fear behind us. In fact, those of us who put fear behind us during the scariest times are the ones that should be the most fearless for the future, and will be. We continue on. Circumcision then was reinvigorated. The blessing of the covenant came to Israel. They had their first Passover, and when they ate of the fruit of the fields from Passover, the manna stopped. No longer would God give manna from heaven. Now they can eat from the promised land. It's their land. But one problem. some big cities, and one of them being Jericho, to the north and to the west. The big walls. And this takes us to our text. Joshua chapter 5. And we're going to move down to verse, it looks like 13. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and he saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Okay. Joshua is a young leader, and Moses used to be the leader. He is scared to death. That's why in the beginning of Joshua, over and over, God says, do not be afraid, do not fear, for I shall be with you. So over and over again, God says this. Do not be terrified, do not be afraid. But then when Joshua's trying to figure out how he's going to conquer this great city, he's walking near. All of a sudden, he sees someone with a sword already drawn in his hand, ready for battle. Now, when you see something like that, generally, when someone has their sword out, it's almost like if you're walking through the middle of Los Angeles at night and you find someone with a revolver open, pulled out and cocked. You're probably immediately, you're going to have all your juices flowing, man. You're going to be ready. The adrenaline starts to hit immediately, especially if you're a person that deals and has been in the middle of a war before, as Joshua had. Immediately, I'm sure he pulls his sword as well. And then he asks the question, and here is the study for today. Are you for us, or are you for our enemies? Society separates us. We are divided, even as a country, as people, as denominations. As Christians, we find ourselves divided. The enemy, the first step of destroying a people is to divide them. This is how you know right from wrong many times. When somebody speaks to you as if you're an insider and the other person's an outsider, if you're good and they're bad, in your own group, they're trying to divide instead of working as a team. Now I understand there are going to be divisions no matter what you do, but don't base your base on division. There are entire political organizations based on division, dividing races from each other, dividing peoples from one another, cultures from one another, dividing even within their cultures, dividing this country or dividing other places. Divided we fall, united we stand. Are you for us or for our enemies? We all are divisional in the way we think in the sinful world. But this soldier that is seen just outside of Jericho has an interesting answer. Let's read it. Are you for us, or are you for our enemies? Verse 14 of Joshua chapter 5, verse 14. The answer is neither. Neither, he replied. But as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. The way we view God is we do things that are right, and God is on our side. If we do things that are wrong, then God is not on our side. Don't you do that? Isn't that how we think as human beings? Yes, it is. But God thinks differently. You and I, we may be different. God's not on your side and not on mine. or on my side and not on yours. It doesn't work like that. We need to be on his side. Does that make sense? See, most of the problems of society inside of religion is that the religious system and the leadership seem to feel like they make the rules themselves, like we can do anything we want. This is how you have these molestation cases in churches sometimes, because I am with God, so I can do anything. When I do it, it doesn't matter. And in fact, that's why sometimes entire organizations cover for the sins of the priesthood. But this is not how it is in God's way. We need to be on God's side. God is not on ours. It's not Vicarus Filii Dei, because I say words and have an incantation. That means that I'm perfect and God is always with me, and you better be on my side or you're going to hell. It doesn't work like that. We don't own our church, is the skinny of it. You don't own the church. I don't own the church. God made the church, blessed the church with talents, and has given us the opportunity to work for God within this church. It is his and his alone. God and God alone. You know that song. Man, that's a powerful one, because it's all about God, not about me, not about you. The one thing, and this is now as I end it, the one thing that's the biggest problem in our society as Seventh-day Adventists and as Christians is that we feel that we own the church. This is my church, and then we become entitled. We feel like we can break into the church. We can do anything we want to do to the church because that church is mine. It's kind of like my house. And in fact, if you're kind of not let into it, well, then my house is going to be my church. That's how we are as human beings. We always want to be God. I will be like the Most High. Isn't that what the devil did? But God has called us to something greater than this. We are on the side of God. That is why my churches are with me. Not because I am somehow better than others. It's because God ordained me to be here. But God can take me out just like he can take you out. It's his choice, not ours. God's in charge. We are his servants. He is our God. So we have here, neither, he said, neither am I for your enemies or for you, but I am the captain of God's army, the commander of his armies of heaven. I have now come. Joshua fell face down, and then he said these words. Not Joshua, then the commander. And by the way, you know who that commander is? He's none other than Jesus Christ. He said, where you're standing is holy ground. Remember that. Where you stand when you are on God's side, is holy ground. I'll see you in the next few minutes for the intercession part of Call to Prayer. May your heart find strength in God being your leader. I'll see you in a few moments.